Hello, welcome back to the channel. So I feel like with castorice out now and Hyacinth on the horizon, I feel like we have a pretty good idea of how Remembrance works now and what it's like. And while I do like Remembrance, I mean castorice is probably the most fun character I've had, for me at least in a while, even if I am still not a fan of the whole global passive thing. I do think Remembrance kind of has some problems with its design right now, mainly I feel is the lack of a real identity. I mean obviously the identity is the memo sprite mechanic, but I feel like it isn't like as specialized as the other paths are. Like, abundance is mainly about like healing, agility is mainly for like debuffs. I mean, even like the DPS paths, like erudition being more AoE focused, hunt being more like single target, and destruction being mainly like about taking damage for a benefit. I feel like the Remembrance characters we have now could have easily been like any other path and just had the memo sprite thing as a new mechanic. Like castorice could have just been a destruction character. Remembrance MC could have just been a harmony character. I mean, they basically are that already. Even like Hyacinth, if she ends up being a healer, like, which there is no way she isn't, could have just been abundance, The other one that maybe doesn't really fit into anyone that's like a bit more ambiguous is Aglaya, since she doesn't really fit perfectly into any of the paths. The best match is probably like Hunt, even though she isn't like purely single target, though that might be like a good thing, since it's probably the best use of Remembrance that we have right now. Since, while someone like castorice is cool, she could have easily just been like destruction, like I said, Now you could say like, why does this matter, Well, it's like, why make Remembrance in the first place if it's just gonna feel more like an extension of the paths we already have rather than its own thing, Which, to be fair, would be kind of hard to make like a new path wholly its own thing, since the paths we already have do kind of fill out any role you would want on a team, which I do think is fair, but that kind of leads me on to like the main problem, which is that Remembrance is almost like too good of a path because they can just kind of do everything, Like memo sprites as a mechanic are just so insanely good. It's basically just like a free turn for like any team. The only reason it isn't just completely broken right now is because the characters we have always have some sort of like restriction on them. Like, castorice, you need to be able to build up the gauge in order to use the big dragon. Remembrance MC, you can only action advance forward when you have the gauge full. And with the Goliath, most of her damage mainly just comes from her ultimate and less from her like memo sprite itself. And it also has like a pretty big energy cost as well. Now, Hyacinth, I have no idea since I don't look at leaks, but I assume that she's probably going to be pretty similar, where like her memo sprite probably like heals, but she'll have like some sort of thing locked behind like her ultimate or something that makes it heal like a lot more. The main problem with this is that it just kind of overshadows a lot of the other paths. Like, why would you ever just not use a Remembrance character if you have one, when they just do what other paths can do, but just better? Obviously that isn't like totally the case yet, since we only have 3 Remembrance characters right now, but I can definitely see it being a bigger problem in the future, especially if we get a lot more like Remembrance supports and things like that, and like healers and that sort of thing. Especially with a lot of the new characters being very strong, like just very good, But besides that, in terms of problems right now, one thing is that Remembrance doesn't really have many great options for light cones right now. Like, there are some good options for like Remembrance MC. I mean, you get one just from doing the story, but for like Aglaya and castorice, they don't have many great options, especially castorice, since the best one besides her signature is locked behind a battle pass, and most of the other Remembrance light cones don't really have like any sort of HP thing, so you're kind of just resorted to using like an abundance light cone or something. It's really bad. Now obviously this will change as the game goes on and more light cones get released, but right now it is pretty restrictive. Like, you don't really have that many great options if you aren't just, like, spending money, One good thing, though, is that I do think that the 3-star light cones are actually, like, pretty okay. At least for, like, Aglaya and for Remembrance MC. They aren't, like, amazing, but they are definitely usable and, like, way better than most of the other 3-star light cones in the game, like, because most of them are just kind of awful, like, I'm not gonna lie. Another thing, which isn't necessarily a problem right now, but I am kind of slightly worried about for the future, is that, are they going to keep making Remembrance characters once Amphoris is over, or is it just going to kind of just be abandoned in favor of something else? Because Remembrance isn't necessarily the same thing as like, Break or Follow-Up, where they aren't, just all meant to be on the same team together, and they aren't just solely built around like one mechanic, At least, not right now, that could change in the future as we get, more like support and stuff. Like, castorice doesn't really want, the same team as someone like a Galea, so it's a lot easier to make it just not feel as like repetitive or stale as something like Break might have been. But at the same time, I feel like once Amphoreus is over, we just aren't going to see it again for a while, which you could say is maybe fair since it got like a whole year basically to itself. But I feel like unlike, past mechanics, this is like a whole path, and I feel like if it just gets abandoned, it's like I said earlier, then like what was even the point of making it a whole path, Because I do think that each path should get characters fairly equally and fairly regularly. So I do hope that it gets more characters after Amphoreus. Now, I doubt that they would be gone like forever, but I just hope that it's not like something like Dot, where it just gets like one character and then just nothing else, One other thing, which is kind of related, but not really, which I do think is kind of a side effect of Remembrance, which is just how much more the enemies attack now. Since with Remembrance now you have way more actions than you did before, so now they're giving the enemies also way more actions. I mean, Nicodor attacked like 3 times in a row, and now even with the Flame Reaver boss also attacking a ton as well, and also doing a lot more damage. We are already kind of seeing this as a thing, The problem with this is that it makes it even harder for older characters to keep up more than they already were. Since now with Gen 10, you don't have just like the health to worry about, you also have to worry about being able to actually do something and not just die from not being able to take action, I don't know, it just makes it way harder for older characters to keep up. Now you could say that this isn't really the fault of Remembrance, and that's more just like a design problem, which I do think is partially true because the health thing was happening even before Remembrance came out. I don't really think they would be making enemies attack this much if Remembrance wasn't a thing and you could just have an action whenever you want, At the end of the day, I do like Remembrance, I just don't want it to just feel like the same thing as other paths, just with a new mechanic attached to it, But I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see what future characters do, since we are still a long way from being done with Amphoreus. So I hope that it feels more like its own thing as it goes on. Because I feel like people don't realize how much more of Amphoreus we have. I mean, they said it's going to go to what, like 3.7, 3.8? We're only going to what, like 3.2 right now? We still got a lot more characters to get and a lot more stuff to go through, so we'll just have to see what the future holds. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.